welcome to another edition of Ultimate Hockey. I'm your host, Liam Maguire, here with Shean Donovan. Joining us again, if you've caught a few of the previous episodes that we've taped, we're here at Liam Maguire's restaurant after my own name, I have to say. We don't have our props here today, Dono. We'll have to get those after, undoubtedly. Number Molson X coming. But we're here at Liam Maguire's restaurant in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, 1705 Saint Laurent Boulevard. And I just want to say this, for anybody who's watching by chance from outside the area, you contact me, send us a note here, however you've seen the show, whether it's on liamsci.com, which we're doing it for, or prosportsblogging.com. #1 sports blogging site on the internet where the fans are the sports writers. Either of those locations, send me a message. I'll meet you in here, and Sean will buy you the first round.
Perfect.
How's she going, Duddle?
Good.
Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you. Look, we got lots of hockey here to cover off in 15 minutes. Let's get at it. As we speak, as we sit here right now, the second round, which looked like it was limping to a conclusion, has now gone into, shall we say, a seventh game, extra time here with the San Jose Sharks and the Detroit Red Wings. First and foremost, your thoughts on this series so far and what you expect tonight before we get into the second round and a recap of the third round and a recap of the second round.
Well, it's been kind of a bad second round compared to our first round. Our first round, we were spoiled with those game sevens and all those big matchups, but this second round, this matchup right here is kind of made up for it. Game 6 was unbelievable. The pace of the game's unbelievable. Yeah. Two teams flying around, and I can't wait for Game 7. See what Datsyuk's got up his sleeve here, and see if the big boys in San Jose show up. We'll see.
Now, you mentioned Datsuk. Let's just start there for starters. I mean, here's a guy allegedly with a bad wing. I don't know what the status of his hand is or whatnot, but you're a former player with 1,000 games under your belt. You went to the finals with Calgary in 2004. You must be able to look at this situation and just give him all the props in the world.
Well, of course, guys play injured all the time, but the way, obviously, I think he looks like he's getting more healed because he's looking more confident, stronger in the corners. He's playing unbelievable, and he's battling. So, I don't know, whatever injury he has, I wish I had one of those. It's unbelievable.
No, and you're sporting a little injury. Maybe we'll talk about that before we sign off today because you're hanging with Chris Neal and some of the guys who are keeping in shape in the offseason. But, yeah, it's been an unbelievable series. Let's recap before we go a little further then and talk about Boston, Philly, and Tampa Bay, Washington. Both series end in 4 straight. You called the Bruins. I called the Flyers. So you got me on that one and scoreboard. But even though I think we both predicted a longer series for sure,
yep.
How much now we've just since found out that 6 Philadelphia Flyers are going or have gone under the knife. Clearly injuries have played a role here, not the least of which was to Chris Pronger.
Yep. Well, when you lose your top player, one of the top D-men in the league, and the guy who makes your team go well, obviously, he wasn't playing. He was injured, and obviously we know now he's getting his back surgery. But to have all those injuries, you're not going to win like that. I mean, Philadelphia had a hard season. Lots of those guys played. I think they had the most players of any team in the league who played in the Olympics the year before. They went from Olympics to Stanley Cup Finals to a short off season to being the front runners in the East to kind of struggling near the end, and it just caught up to them. I think that's what ended up happening.
And give the Bruins credit. I mean, an emotional victory over an arch rival in Series 1, in overtime in Game 7, and then you have an opportunity to play the team that knocked you out last year after you win the first 3, lose the next 4. There was none of that this year. Got to give credit to Boston where it's due as well. Yeah,
Boston, the big line, showed up. Their power play finally got on the board, and hopefully if they're going to advance, obviously through Tampa, they're going to have to sharpen up that power play, and Carberley is going to have to, play better than he has. So, but Timmy T played awesome. Tim Thomas played unbelievable as usual. It's going to be a great matchup for goaltenders in that Eastern Conference Finals. So,
just before we move on from there, just quickly, I want to ask you: were you surprised at all? I kept waiting for DEFCON 4 to happen in a couple of those times. I know Chera threw the shots there, hit a couple guys, and Hartnell, he dummied them basically, even though they didn't really drop the gloves. And I know Scotty's not going to try Chera in a one-on-one.
No.
So that's Chera. There's a few other guys, and Philly's an abrasive team that never really saw that out of them. In the 4 games, I saw very little of that. I was surprised.
Yeah, I think obviously you look at Philadelphia and Boston. I looked at the matchup. I thought for sure, when the score got out of hand, it was going to be a melee. It'd be mid-70s because they got guys that want to go with each other. But it looked like Philly really was down. I mean, they looked like when they weren't getting the goaltending, it just seemed like it really the team was down and they were out, and it looked like they were a defeated team. And I think it had a lot to do with their goaltending. I think that they all kind of knew when they weren't getting the goaltending and they're pulling goalies left and right that I think they ended up being a pretty defeated team in the end.
Speaking of defeated teams, I don't know what the Washington Capitals are going to be looking at with the millions and millions of dollars they have now siphoning off their payroll to a bunch of guys that, especially the leaders on this team, Sean, I really have to have a huge question mark, I think. I mean, I think Ovechkin played all right, but, you know, you see a lot of the same things from this guy. Once the going really gets tough, he still tries to do too much himself, I think. But your thoughts on Tampa Bay, Washington, and the dismantling of the Capitals here, again under Bruce Boudreau, and again with Ovechkin at the helm?
Well, I mean, I asked you this question a while back, and I'd asked you how many Russians had won the Stanley Cup in the last 10 years. Yeah. And I think it was 6 players. And you look at all the talented Russians in this league, and now you look, there's so many of them on Washington, and none of them have won the Cup, none of those Russians. And that's what makes your team go for those guys, is those Russians. So not to just batter the Russians over and over, but they haven't had a lot of success. You got an anomaly like Pavel Datsyuk, who has done it. But, you know, that's who makes them go, is those Russians. And they haven't done in the playoffs. So they're going to obviously have to address this going ahead here if they're, going to try to make it the next level, try to make it the conference finals and maybe win a Cup.
You know, just on that note, let's digress for a second. I mean, you played against the vaunted Russian Five. Yep. You know, when that whole thing started in the mid-'90s under Scotty Bowman in Detroit and carried over. The irony there that a lot of people don't realize, when they set the record for their points, essentially keeping that unit together in '96, they didn't win the Cup that year. Mm-hmm. You know, Colorado knocked them off, and you had that vicious Claude Lemieux hit on Chris Draper, which became almost the staple moment of that particular series, and really of the playoffs, and Colorado went on to win a Cup. You were also a former Colorado Avalanche. But the Russian Five, you know, you played against them, and you're talking about a guy like Datsyuk. Well, you know, Fedorov, Larionov, Fedosov, these guys were quality Russian hockey players. I don't want to take anything away from Semin, but he's got a lot to prove if he's going to step up and show that he can go to the next level. And you've already got a lot of money invested in this guy.
Well, I was pretty lucky. I got to play the guy like Larionov, and Larionov was top-notch, a real respectful guy, and he'd always get mad the Russians wouldn't play. You know, they'd come over and wouldn't have the impact that they should, that they were just highly skilled. But he's smart enough, and they obviously had Fedosov, who was very well liked and a hard worker, and those guys just transitioned to good NHLers. But you don't see that a lot, and I don't know if they have that in Washington. There's not really that Russian that could kind of pull them together, and it's going to, I mean, they've tried it with Viktor Kozlov. They tried to bring in some good Russian guys, but I don't know. You're going to having to have some guy come in and really take those guys and be the leader for those guys, but you haven't seen it yet. They always plug in guys, like they try to bring in North Americans like Arnott and try to plug holes here and there, but really you're going to have one guy become your leader on that team, and I don't, for as good as Ovechkin is, I don't know if he's the guy who's going to bring you the Cup. Although he could be a part of it, but he's not going to be your main guy.
You know, and just on that note, and then we'll move on. But you mentioned Ovechkin, and he's wearing the C.
Yep.
You know, I think back to 2004, for example, when the Tampa Bay Lightning, who won the Cup that year, pulled the C off of LeCavalier and gave it to Dave Andrechuk.
Yep.
Flyers pulled the C off of Eric Desjardins, gave it to Keith Primo.
Yep.
You know, you had that happened. In fact, every team in the semifinals in 04 had a guy that had the C removed from him in whatever reason. What do you think about Ovechkin still carrying the C? Maybe, is that the right thing moving forward for Washington?
I mean, it looks good because, you know, usually you give your C to, nowadays it seems like you give it to your better player, but I don't think that's the way it should be. It has to be the leader. It has to be somebody that's going to bring the room. He's the best guy in your room. He's the guy that makes the guys go. Usually the guy who has a C, like Dave Andrechuk in Tampa, they were trying to win the Cup for him. You know what I mean? He had the C, and they were trying to win for him. Obviously they had leaders, but they looked to Dave Andrechuk to help them win. And he wasn't the top scorer or anything like that, but he was just the leader in the room. And for Wash right now, there's nobody in that room, you know, Green, and there's nobody in that room who's really that guy. Maybe they're going to have to come out and go out and get a guy for a year or 2 years, an older guy, you know, just to help bring in that. Like Bill Guerin in Pittsburgh, they brought in Bill Guerin, and he didn't wear the C, but he was the kind of the leader in that room. You talk to different people, and he kind of helped Crosby become the leader that he was. Obviously, Mario Lemieux up top helping him too, but you know, Ovechkin doesn't get that in Washington, so they're going to need to bring somebody in, and I don't know who it is, but they're going to have to think about bringing somebody in to be the leader there.
Did you guys not take the C from Conroy and give it to Iginla that year?
Yeah, Connie gave it up. He knew that.
He gave it up.
Yeah.
But again.
Yeah, and
you know, for the betterment of the team, sometimes you got to look at that.
And Connie knew that too. He knew it was his time, and Connie's a consummate leader. Guys loved him because what Connie did in the room is he would stick up for the guys. So say he was bashing on me or Andrew Ferentz or somebody, and we're a little shy or something, we're not going to go after Daryl Sutter, but a guy like him, like Craig Conroy, would go into Daryl's office and be like, that's not right. You're not treating those guys right. So he was a leader, but he was smart enough to know that it was Iggy's time. It was time for him to be the leader.
Yeah.
He played like the leader. He was maybe the best captain I've ever played for, other than Jeff Odgers. But but he was an unbelievable captain, and he still is. So there's nobody in Calgary who's going to take the seat from him. But
no, but interesting that they made the move, and even though you say Conroy agreed to it, but I think we've got a scenario there in Washington. They need to look long and hard. It'll be a great trivia question years from now. People go, who was the captain before Ovechkin? You won't remember Chris Clark. But you know what? That guy was a heart and soul guy. And sometimes, like you say, it doesn't have to be necessarily the best player. That held true in Calgary with Iginla, but doesn't always hold true. You know,
and I think from experience, like Chris Clark, he played in our team in Calgary there, and he got to see Jerome McGinley and how he carried himself, what kind of leader he was. So he brought that to Washington, and I know sometimes you just think that a young guy, and he is the focal point of your advertising and media and everything, and you want him to see with a C. But is he ready? I don't know. It doesn't look like he's ready.
2 minutes for each of the series coming up. We'll do the best we can with Game 7 upon us here. Let's start with the one we know, Tampa Bay and Washington. Sean, you couldn't divide these teams more equal. You know, 103 points in the regular season, 46 wins. Boston did win 3 out of the 4 games, but I don't think you can throw that out of the wash right now. How do you see this one?
Oh, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, goaltending. Here you got Rolison, who hasn't given up a game, you know, a deciding game, 7 series in a row. That's an unbelievable stat. You got him coming up against Tim Thomas. It's going to be awesome. You got 2 defensive systems too. You have Julian Bouchard, who are very defensive coaches. So it may not be the most exciting, fun offensive series, but I'm thinking if the Bruins forwards, the big forwards, can actually, you know, push themselves on the defense in Tampa, and you're going to lose Cabina, it sounds like, for a little bit. I don't know. For me, I like the Bruins. I picked them quite a bit. I got them hopefully going to the finals, but with their top line finally start scoring, and if they can get a little bit of help from Caberlet in the third round here, you know, the Bruins will look good. But you know, what can you expect from that third line from Tampa? Are they going to be able to carry the load that they have? I think they've got more points than LeCavalier, St. Louis,
Bergenheim, Downey, and Dominic Moore.
Yeah, that's incredible. But in the playoffs, you get stuff like that. So if those guys can carry what they've done or be as effective as they have been through the first 2 rounds, then it'll make it a series, obviously.
Shades of Chris Kontos and John Druce from 89 and 90, respectively. A couple minutes here left to go. We didn't really break down Vancouver, Nashville, but the Canucks are through. They made it through, despite all of the angst that's in Canada, certainly in British Columbia, about them. I've never seen a team take more slings and arrows, considering they've never trailed in either series, you know, albeit giving up the lead against the Blackhawks. What do you see against them if it's San Jose? How do you see that one? Let's look at that, and then we'll wrap up with Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, with Vancouver finally, you know, moving on to the conference finals, I mean, the Sedins take so much heat there. Kessler had an unbelievable series, but the Sedins, they are going to have to bring more offense. But for Kessler, he had such a good series. But at the same time, the Sedins they are still very effective and good players. You know, they didn't have the great series, and they're not as dominant as they were during the regular season, but they're still good players. It's hard. They're the favorite team, and everybody's cheering against them, it seems. Nobody's really hoping that they win. Everybody's just like, they're the favorites, they should win. And if they don't win, well, you know what? They should break up the team and just enough with the Vancouver Canucks. So it'll be interesting to see. If they play the San Jose Sharks, you got San Jose Sharks, who are a big team. I think the San Jose Sharks, for me, match up better against them Vancouver than I think the Detroit Red Wings do. I think San Jose is just a big, fast team, and I think Niemi, who has that Stanley Cup experience, and I don't know. For me, I like the matchup with San Jose and Vancouver more so than the Detroit. I think with Detroit, you're going to run into the problem of. For me, I just think there's so many Swedes that. Playing against each other, it might be pretty comfortable for the Sedins, and you might see the Sedins actually light it up if they play Detroit. Interesting point, because they've done anything but so far. They're both -8. They both struggled. They each scored 1 goal against Nashville. One of them was an empty netter. Not good. 90 seconds or less, Sean, if it happens to be Detroit against Vancouver, where you kind of just summarized it pretty much. But just another comment, maybe just on a goaltending point of view. Roberto Luongo, Jimmy Howard. How do you see that matchup? I guess Luongo, for me, he's an unbelievable goalie, but can he steal games? I haven't seen him steal a lot of games yet. So they're going to need him to steal some games if they're going to win the Stanley Cup. And Howard, for Game 5, he's the reason that they're in Game 7 now. And Howard stole that Game 5 for them against the San Jose Sharks. He played unbelievable, gave Detroit a chance to come home and dominate the Sharks. And now Game 7, you know, if he wins, then going forward, he's going to have some confidence. Usually Detroit's Achilles heel is the goaltending, but so far Howard's been unbelievable for them. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Ultimate Hockey. Liam Maguire, Shean Donovan, a little bit of a playoff preview continuing here as we get set for the 3rd round. We'll see if Jimmy Howard can follow in the lines of Mike Vernon, Chris Osgood, Dominic Hasek. Can he steal another page and get the Wings another cup? They've got a big Game 7 tonight. Our next series will be recapping that one, talking a little bit more about the semis, getting you ready for the finals as well as we get set here on more Ultimate Hockey here at Liam Maguire's Restaurant, 1705 St. Laurent Boulevard with Shean Donovan. I'm Liam Maguire. Thanks for watching.